Hi there, my name is Matti Sulanto, and in this video I'm gonna take a look at this Olympus 14-42mm motorized kit zoom lens. This lens is pretty normal kit lens, except for the fact that it's motorized. The lens extends and retracts with electronic motor, of course, electronic motor, and also the zoom action is motorized instead of the more conventional mechanical zoom action. And I'm making this video because I just found this lens. This is another Olympus lens that I pretty much had forgotten that I even own. Last weekend I was organizing those metal drawers back there where I keep my gear, and in the back corner of the drawer where I keep my lenses is this box. But the box was so light I was pretty sure it's empty, and I was about to throw it in the recycling bin. But I decided to take a look inside just in case, and lo and behold, there is this lens inside. And because the weather was unusually pretty for this time of the year, I decided to take this lens for a spin. And here are my impressions on using this lens on Lumix G9 and G90 camera bodies. The first thing that came to my mind when I mounted this lens on my Lumix camera was the compatibility. I was a bit worried if I can use all the motorized functions when this lens is mounted on a Lumix camera body. But it turned out I was worrying too much. Pretty much all the functions, at least all the most important functions, are also available when mounted on a Lumix camera body. The lens will extend and retract when I use the power switch of my camera, and I can also program the zooming action or the zooming function on the function buttons of my camera. But I can't change the direction of the focus ring because that's not available on Lumix cameras in general, not even with the Lumix lenses. And I don't know if there are some other functions or features that are available if this lens is mounted on an Olympus camera body. But when I was using this lens, I didn't feel that I was missing something. Now let's have a look at some pictures that I shot on this lens last weekend here in sunny Helsinki, Finland. The mechanical construction of this lens is actually pretty decent for a kit lens. The bayonet is metal, and all in all this feels like it's pretty well put together. The zoom ring is not actually a ring at all. I mean, it's a ring, but it's more like a switch that only controls the motor that does the zooming. And this lens is remarkably compact when it's at the retracted position, but still there is also a manual focus ring. So if you prefer to focus manually, it's easy on this lens. This lens weighs in at about 90 grams, so it's really lightweight. And the filter thread is 37mm. Olympus also sells an automatic accessory lens cap that opens when you power the lens on and closes automatically when you power the lens off. It's a really practical accessory, and I wonder why it's not included in the price, because it's just so perfect with the lens like this. At this point, can I please ask you to sign up for my monthly newsletter where I share tips and tricks and updates that I don't necessarily share here on YouTube. I also share links to other photographers' work that I think is inspiring or interesting. And when you sign up, you'll get a free Lightroom preset that also works with Adobe Camera Raw, the latest version of Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw. So after this video, please head to my website sulanto.fi and sign up. Thanks, and now back to the topic of the day. So this is a tiny lens and therefore suitable for all micro four thirds cameras, big ones and small ones. When it's mounted on one of the bigger cameras like the G9 and even on the G90, it feels like there's no lens at all. But that's not a negative comment at all. The user experience when it comes to the usability is quite good, I think. But I'm not too crazy about the power zoom function because sometimes it's a little bit tricky to make an exact or precise framing because the zoom is a little bit edgy, or how would I describe it? It's just not as delicate as a manual zoom. The optical construction is 8 elements in 7 groups, which for a zoom lens sounds pretty simple, but there are some special glass elements to make sure the image quality is decent. And the focal length is from 14mm moderate wide angle to a 42mm short telephoto. And the maximum aperture is from f3.5 to f5.6. All those numbers are pretty normal for any consumer grade standard zoom lens or any kit lens. But there is no optical stabilizer built into this lens, and that gives this lens a small disadvantage when it's mounted on a Lumix camera body. The IBIS in the latest Lumix cameras is really good, but the dual IS is even better, but that requires a stabilized lens. However, there are some Lumix cameras like the GX880 for example, and some older models that don't have in-body image stabilizer. And for those cameras I can't recommend this Olympus lens. So the optical construction is relatively simple. But I have nothing to complain about the optical performance of this little lens. The pictures come out sharp and contrasty, and even the backlight is not a big problem. The main central part of the image is sharp, already wide open. But if you want the really uniform sharpness across the whole frame, it's a good idea to stop down to about f8, which in theory is already affected by the diffraction, but in practice the pictures come out really sharp at f8 or f11. But I wouldn't go beyond f11 because after that the pictures come out soft. And there are no visible vignetting, chromatic aberrations or distortions because they are corrected in camera or in some RAW developers too. The autofocus of this lens is really fast and reliable. There's nothing more to say about that. And I already mentioned the manual focus ring, which makes also manual focusing really easy if you prefer that. And here's a second set of pictures that I shot in sunny Helsinki last weekend. The price of this lens seems to vary a lot, but the cheapest price seems to be around 150 euros or US dollars, which I think is a pretty decent price. I don't think many people buy this kind of a lens new, but if you for some reason like these motorized features or functions and you can get this lens for about 150 US dollars or euros, I think you can't go much wrong. I got this lens many years ago in a kit, but I have hardly used it, and like I said at the beginning, I had almost forgotten I even have this lens. I would much rather have a mechanical, traditional, manual zoom lens. I think it's so much nicer to use. But that's just my personal opinion. if you like these motorized features or functions, there's nothing wrong with this lens. It's optically decent, it's really tiny, and it makes even this G90 almost pocketable, and there's, you know, very little to complain about if you think about this as a kit lens or standard zoom lens, consumer grade zoom lens. The only minor downside I can figure out for a Lumix user is that this is not dual IS compatible. But that's not really a big deal because the IBIS still gives you several stops of stabilization even without the dual IS. But like I said earlier, if you have a non-stabilized camera body, I don't recommend this lens. So if you're looking for a motorized zoom lens and you can get this for a good price, this is a good option also for a Lumix user. That's it this time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.